Hello，大家好。我们都知道俄乌交战，乌克兰反攻屡屡得胜。那么我们就要问，俄罗斯的防守当中，难道他的这个狙击手没有起到应有的作用吗？实际不然。在这场猫捉老鼠的游戏当中，让我们请看片子，乌克兰军队是怎么消灭俄罗斯的狙击手部队的。Let's go!
By the beginning of September, the Ukrainian army managed to accumulate significant forces near Kharkov and create an advantage in a limited sector of the front. The Russians occupied this city in the first week of the invasion on March 3rd. The liberation began on 6 September. The Russians were expecting an attack, so they were preparing to repel an assault on the city. The composition of the attacking groups was also unusual. Tankers of the 92nd Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, 92nd, acted at the forefront of each. Movement took place along the main and secondary routes and country roads. Weak spots in the defense of the Russians turned out to be at the junctions of responsibility, so any object is visible on the road. But the most dangerous moment is the first moments when the tank reaches the top of the hill, because the crew does not see what lies ahead. At such points, as a rule, there is a checkpoint made of concrete blocks from where it is convenient to fire with any anti-tank weapon. Fortunately, the soldiers of the Russian Guard were on duty at the rear checkpoints. The advanced tanks of the 92nd Brigade smashed the rear checkpoints. The heavy fire of the Ukrainian armored personnel carriers cut off the Russian infantry, which dug in the forest belt along the road. The Ukrainians quickly took control of the forks in the road until the main forces approached, and then rushed further. Due to the rapid change in the combat situation, the Russian artillery did not know where to shoot. Russian aviation was also powerless. It was impossible to recognize friend or foe in such a mess from the air. The Russian attack aircraft pilots did not have operational data, so there was a big risk of running into a Ukrainian Stinger or hitting their own. But the Ukrainians managed to coordinate their actions in real time. Starlink stations have become a useful acquisition. The Starlink terminal fits into a soldier's backpack. Thanks to satellite internet, the forward detachments of the armed forces of Ukraine quickly exchanged information and coordinated their actions. Thus, the Ukrainians created several deep wedges on a small section of the front. Chaos broke out behind Russian lines. They abandoned equipment and weapons, left ammunition depots, and fled to Kupiansk in order to gain a foothold on the eastern bank of the Oskol River. This river divides the city in half. The Russian troops needed time to regroup and organize a new line of defense there. The forward strike groups of Ukrainian troops have already advanced about 60 to 65 miles. The Russians had nothing to meet the tanks of the 92nd Ukrainian Brigade. The 1st and 2nd lines of defense of the Russians and combat-ready formations were already in the rear of the Ukrainians under heavy artillery fire. The Russian command organized the delivery of equipment by air. Cargo helicopters with armored personnel carriers and self-propelled guns landed one by one on the eastern bank of Oskol. In addition, reinforcements were sent from the deep rear to Kupiansk. Kupiansk is an important logistical point. The city is connected by rail with the Russian junction station, Velyuky. Echelons with equipment and ammunition for the Russian group of troops in the east of the Luhansk region went through Kupiansk. To delay the rapid advance of the Ukrainian troops, the Russians removed sniper teams into the gray zone. Time ticked by. At first glance, it may seem that the snipers have nothing to oppose the tanks and armored personnel carriers of the 92nd Brigade. Actually, this is not the case. Once upon a time, snipers operated alone. So it was in World War II. Then a sniper pair became the new standard, a shooter plus an observer-spotter. A sniper pair is capable of delaying a company's advance for a long time, or keeping a front section of 1 to 1.2 miles in tension. In this war, the Russians introduced sniper teams. Working in groups turned out to be much more effective than in classical twos. Each group consists of 4, 6, 8 people depending on the situation. 2 shooters are armed with light Dragunov sniper rifles. Their task is to destroy infantry at a distance of 2 to 2.5 thousand feet. 2 more snipers fire from heavy ABSK sniper rifles, caliber 12.7 by 108 millimeters. This ammunition hits unarmored or lightly armored vehicles. The range of ABSK sniper rifles on human targets can reach 20,000 feet, but the range of destruction of lightly armored vehicles is noticeably less, up to 5,000 feet. The sniper team also included a shooter with a heavy machine gun or a combat crew with portable anti-tank weapon. It can be a grenade launcher or an anti-tank missile system. An important member of the sniper team remains the observer. He corrects the fire of snipers and, if necessary, transmits the coordinates of significant targets of artillery and aviation. In just a couple of hours, one sniper unit can kill more than a dozen fighters. In such a situation, a small advancing group is deprived of the opportunity to attack. And if the snipers have the courage to let the Ukrainian tank get closer, then the advance will be completely stopped for several hours. Russian snipers near Kupiansk plan to stall the Ukrainians until dark. Thanks to night vision devices, the attackers would become even easier targets. They were fighters of the sniper company of the Marine Guards Brigade of the Russian Pacific Fleet. They were sent from the other side of Russia to help the sniper company of the 200th Motorized Rifle Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces. To complete the task, a group of Russian snipers settled down in the attic of one of the houses. Shooting started. Due to the noise of Ukrainian vehicles, it was impossible to detect the sniper position. The offensive of the Ukrainian shock group stalled at the entrance to the village. Drones were deployed. For reconnaissance, Ukrainians use ordinary civilian quadricopters. They are extremely cheap, but just as vulnerable, especially for snipers. Fortunately, the position of the Russian group was revealed before the drone was found. The Ukrainian artillery was too far away. It wasn't long before dark. Therefore, the commander of one of the tanks of the 92nd Brigade decided to break into the village and destroy the Russian firing point with direct fire. We don't know his name yet. For accuracy, it was necessary to drive closer, but not close enough to be hit by a grenade launcher. The Ukrainian 92nd Brigade is armed with slightly modernized T-64 tanks. This is a medium Soviet tank, which was produced from 1963 to 1987. As you understand, this is far from the most advanced machine. The weak point of the T-64 is the engine cooling system. A tank can fail at any moment, although at one time it was considered an excellent vehicle. A slight excess of the operating temperature of the T-64 engine leads to jamming of the pistons. Therefore, this tank is contraindicated for long maneuvering or movement at full speed over long distances. Drivers do not like T-64s, but gunners do. This tank has a good fire control system. Alexander was the gunner and the crew of our heroic tank. That's all we know so far. As we've already said, the 92nd Brigade is now in the thick of things. It is attacking Savoto and Kremenaya. Alexander's first shot forced the Russian snipers to leave the attic and hide in the basement. This is known from the report of the surviving commander of the Russian sniper group. The report goes on to say that the second shot forced the Russians to move to the basement of another house nearby. However, the tank commander received information by radio that the sniper group had changed its location. Alexander's next volley was already on the new position of the Russians. The snipers realized that a quadricopter was following them, but they no longer had an opportunity to do anything. The fourth shot from the tank caught them at the exit from the basement. The snipers wanted to run. The next two shots were straight into the basement. 4 snipers died on the spot. One, with a severe wound, was left to die under the rubble. The group commander and 1 wounded gunner were able to leave the line of fire and survived. The Ukrainian strike group reached the outskirts of Kupiansk. On this day, September 9th, the western part of the city was already under the control of Ukrainian forces.